Okay. Good afternoon all, and Ravi, thanks for the introduction, and don't worry about getting the name wrong. We could be due for a rebranding, so who knows, maybe HQ one day. So look, it's been a real pleasure being here with everybody in Rotterdam today. It's been inspiring to listen to what's going on. I've been in this industry long enough to recognize that not too long ago there was still the debate about, is climate change a hoax? What do we do about sustainability? And what we've seen today is real ideas, we've seen real money, and we've seen real commitment. So to see such a consensus amongst this group leading the change is truly inspiring to see. And at the Stock Expo, to see the different ideas, the different equipment, and the socialization of what this could be in the future, I think we're in good hands. So a little bit about HG. So HG, we've got 8 terminal operations in different parts of the world, cumulative 3 million cubic meters capacity. The portfolio was originally part of the Glencore group and has since been spun out into a joint venture. And as recently as this year, a new partner will be joining that joint venture, which is in the top right there, TriStar. That is due to complete later this year. So that is bringing another trade player with different ideas, different views on sustainability, which should add to the commitment and ideas for our business. So again, this leads into the fact that we might be due for a name. Any good names, let me know. So one slide just to look at this. And this is really looking at the will of mankind, womankind, whatever we want to put as the terminology, to really attack problems and find solutions to it. Because usually what you find is when there is a will, there is a way. So this is incomplete, but if we look at just a history of solving complex problems, what we've got through many decades is once-in-a-generation events that people get together, ideas get together, regulation gets together, money gets together, execution gets together, and problems get solved. So if we look towards the end here, ESG, this is very much mainstream. Before it was on the peripherals, it is now very much front and center of all decision-making at all levels within all companies. One thing which I will come back to, which is quite new, is the advent of social media and influencers, because that is where things are a little bit different today than what they might have been 10, 20, 30 years ago. So everybody is familiar with the Paris Agreement and what was struck, and then a lot of new commitments were put in place in Glasgow last year. I wouldn't say that that is the end of the rainbow, but it definitely was a seismic shift in getting this into the mainstream. So a lot of new commitments were made, a lot of new focus was made, and whilst it can't please everybody all the time, a lot of the commitments came out were much stronger than what they were before. And this is what we're seeing now, where a lot of individuals, companies, governments are all striving to reach these different accords and agreements. So if we look at what has come out of that, this slide, you can put almost every public company in the world in there. Our ambition is to be net zero by a certain date. So everybody's coming out with these statements. What we're finding as well is if we look at this, there are different ways of doing it. We find that there is some real action, and this is what is fueling a lot of the investment today, a lot of the behavior today. We've spoken about supply side, we've spoken about demand side. This is where the real change is happening. What we do have as well is progress, and progress should be commended, but at the same time we should recognize a lot of these targets, a lot of these aspirations are exactly that. A lot of them are non-committal, non-planned, but definitely a direction of travel. But again, that is something that was not there 10 years ago. So again, we should take comfort in that. Some of the areas that I think we all need to pay a bit of attention to is greenwashing. So again, whenever there's an opportunity, very smart people will invent different ways effectively to put wrappers around things and present it as one thing when it's not. So greenwashing is a way of different companies, different people achieving targets via synthetic means. And again, within that, some of these might be true abatement and therefore they should not be criticized. Some of them might just be window dressing, in which case the substance is not there. But these are things to watch out for because everybody has got targets, everybody will feel the pressure to meet those targets. And the big one, which few people are talking about now, but I think will become much more important, is the greenflation. There was the topic before about the different minerals that will be needed to secure the energy transition. A lot of those minerals were 20, 30, 40, 50% of the price they are today when a lot of these targets were put out. So if people are committing to targets by 2035, 2045, fit by 55, and their assumptions around these minerals are deflated prices, this greenflation could well impact the cost and the time of delivery. So we all want the greenflation to not exist, but the reality is it does exist. So sustainability, if we look at this within the company, within the world, we look at different ways around it. A lot of the discussion is around decarbonization. But one of the definitions that has come out from the United Nations is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, I think that that is a sentence that everybody in this room can understand, but if you start digging deeper, what does it truly mean? So we did touch upon before the fuel versus food debate. So if we are decarbonizing, but we're also taking away food sources, is that sustainable? That is a debate to be had. There was a good question earlier about water. Within this, the different colors of the rainbow within hydrogen, a lot of it is dependent on using hydro for green. What are the sources of that water, and is there an opportunity cost for that water? So if we look at this, sustainability is much more than just the decarbonization, which increasingly gets a lot of the focus. It is very much the true ESG. So the environment, the good for our planet, social well-being of the people, and the governance, doing things responsibly. So if we look at the energy transition, it's easy to get lost in the maze of data, but effectively there are two aspects a lot of the focus of this room is going towards, one of which is renewable electricity, and the other is low carbon mobility. Now, this comes back again to the whole social media influences, etc. People want instant gratification. I do, my kids do. But in this industry, we're talking about 2035, fit by 55. We are talking multi-decade, multi-year projects. This is not capable of instant gratification. So let's call it what it is and be focused on the process. So the electricity, the reliability, and the infrastructure and the scale, it's not there today, but it's getting much better, and the market share will certainly benefit renewables versus fossil fuels. And the low carbon mobility, we've heard some great presentations today about the different technologies, and again, there's no one silver bullet. They all have a role to play, and we'll see different progress, whether that is on the road, whether that's in sea, and probably later within terms of air transport. But effectively, there are two things that we're all working on. One is reducing the carbon sources, so that's the emissions, and the other is the carbon sinks, whether that is capture or other abatement initiatives, including forestation. So in terms of the mix, some people have seen similar slides before. What we keep on saying is that the fossil fuels should not be demonized and the others should not be glorified, because they both have a role to play and there is a codependency between them. So if we look within here, there are certainly opportunities within the fossil fuels, and we're working on those and improving those, whether it's lower carbon sources or feeding the transition. And if we look at the different kinds of low carbon, or whether it's the renewables, we've spoken about wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, someone mentioned again. Surely they could do with a brand image consultant, but that debate rightfully is getting more traction these days in terms of its contribution towards a sustainable future. And then hydrogen has been well discussed, and there's different forms of carriers, different technology, and we'll see that increasing its relevance as we go forward. So this comes back to the beginning point about the debate, is if we looked maybe 10, 20 years ago, if people were talking about sustainability, it would have been purely from the green environmental perspective. And that was a single lens. It was a minority within the mainstream discussions. And if we look at it today, it doesn't matter what lens you put on. You could be the most greedy capitalist just thinking about the bottom line. Well, you need to focus on this. You could be wanting to save the world. You should focus on this. You like problem solving, do this. You want to work with customers on their solutions, do this. So it doesn't actually matter what has happened, which is very pleasing. And they often say, this time it's different, is the four most dangerous words in the world, 5 if you use the apostrophe. But this time it is different, because what has converged is that all parties are equally aligned to make sure that this transition does happen. So this is an interesting slide. some of you might have seen similar things in the past, but this is getting to the psychology as well as to why is it different this time. So these are old school models that actually have a direct relevance for what we're talking about today. So the Dunning-Kruger on the left there, this is a model looking at competence versus confidence. And what we see a lot, especially in social media, a disproportionate amount of TikToks, likes, tweets, posts, is people who have got very little competence, but supreme confidence. And that is where a lot of people's information is getting fueled from. But if we look at the energy transition, this is very applicable to the Dunning-Kruger. Because as we all get a bit more competent, we realize we don't know it all. We realize there's more to it. It takes time. And if we're willing to go on the journey, then we can say, okay, this is hard, but we're working on it, we think we get it. And certainly in the room, just since lunchtime this day, I've certainly gone up that competence because as a collective industry, the more we share ideas, I think the more we all going to help ourselves get up that curve. The other bit is where does the understanding lead to action? Because it's very good to have a good understanding, but why does that create action? And this is a model, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is how do we all belong? And this is equally applicable for an individual, a company, a government, regulatory bodies, etc. Is we go from psychological safety, belonging, but really the top of that pyramid is self-actualization. What is my identity? And increasingly, political parties, whoever it is, everybody's identity is linked to their views on sustainability. So that is what's driving the action, combined with the understanding. That is where we are seeing a lot of these movements in terms of ideas and capital towards sustainability. So if we look at HG, and this slide is not specifically applicable to HG, I think this is representative of the industry, some of the initiatives that we see going on. So the previous slide we saw about very interesting projects in terms of hydrogen, which are multi-year. I know you didn't mention the costing, but I'd say multi-billion-dollar projects. These ones are the ones that are going to move the needle very much for all of us and pave the way. But even smaller investments can be made. So if we look around, if we are using fossil fuel vehicles, can we use electrics just to get around the different terminals? If we look around service stations, which are within our portfolio, well, let's offer car charging because you're going to get the same mobility within there, but let's offer different solutions to advance the take-up. If we look at different terminals around the world, can they be repurposed towards biofuels or other different products? And then solar is obviously, the sun shines in a lot of places. How do we harness that for ourselves and for third-party use? And then the other thing is getting the message out there. So in the middle there, this is my colleague Diver, who's in the back row, recently interviewed about biofuels. So I think we all have a part to play in getting the message across to the industry, because I'm sure I can talk on behalf of most in this room. It has been quite topical in recent times with families and friends at dinner tables. What do you do? I'm in the oil and gas sector. And within there, I think we actually need to be very, very proud of what we're doing. Not only are we not digging our own graves for an industry, we're actually recreating a better and bigger industry, and we're at the forefront of all these changes. So some of the examples there, I don't need to read them to you, we've discussed them today. But within this room, there is certainly multiple ideas. A lot of those ideas are going to leave Rotterdam, go back to our different countries, our different companies. And if we come back here in 12 months' time, I suspect there'll be new developments, new projects, new ideas. So the message is we should be proud of what we're doing. Thank you, and looking forward to continuing.